Good morning and welcome to SACAP's Parent Guide to Matric Support webinar. My name is Kirsten Harrison and I'll be your host. Preparing for matric exams is stressful at the best of times, but for those facing their finals in 2020, it is particularly tough. Research shows that there's a lot that parents can do to provide much needed support by helping their student be emotionally, physically, and mentally prepared. Our panel of experts will share a few tips on how you can best support your child through their exam stress. Before we proceed, there are a few house rules that I would like to bring to your attention. Please be advised that we'll have a short Q&A session at the end of the webinar. Please feel free to send us your questions in the Q&A box. Kindly note that this session is recorded and will be shared on our social media platforms. We are aware that there is high internet usage in the country that's slowing down connection in some areas, and we ask for your patience. It is also important to note that we are mostly working from home, so don't be alarmed if you hear a microwave in the background or if a cat crosses the screen. Moving on to our panelists for this morning. First up, we have Esmarie Cilliers, who will take us through study strategies to help your child achieve success. Following Esmarie, we'll have Lauren Martin and Diana De Sousa, who will be speaking into the impact of emotional well-being on performance. Without wasting any time, I will now hand over to Esmarie to share some of these strategies with us.
Thank you, Kirsten, and good morning to all the parents. Your matric child has arrived. And as they face this big final exam in 2020 that marks the transition from childhood to adulthood, I would like to give you a few pointers as to how parents can support them to achieve success. Let's look at our first slide. The family forms a unit, and therefore the rest of the family is also impacted. But it can also be the source of immense support and comfort during the exam. If I leave you today and you can only remember two things, I hope it will be patience and letting go. Let's get started with the second slide. Parents often ask me, how can I motivate my child to study more? And unfortunately, this question brings to mind the saying that you can bring a donkey to the water, but you can't bring it to drink. Real motivation speaks to the dream that lives in your child's heart for their own future. And the best way to motivate them is through encouragement, reminding them of their own strengths and showing them that you believe in them. Give them space to set their own goals, to manage their own schedule, and to achieve those goals for themselves. Remind them of the rewards that they are working towards. This can only be accomplished through good communication and deep connectedness with your matric child. Let's look at how we can make support practical in the next slide. The matrics of 2020 had a difficult year, and what they need the most now is your support and your understanding. Expect that they might be on an emotional roller coaster, and that these emotions may move from rage and anger to sadness and despair in a few seconds. As parents, we need to remain calm and patient. We must learn to control our own anxiety. Listen with understanding and be observant of when they are struggling. Keep communication lines open by asking open questions and refrain from giving too much advice. A good example of an open question would be, how did you experience the exam today? Or what did you think of the exam today? Or, I see a big frown on your forehead. Is something bothering you? As we move to the next slide, remember that you are your child's biggest fan, and that they need your support and love to climb this mountain. Show your support by taking an interest in their study schedule and ask them how papers went without judgment. Give them positive feedback on their efforts and the time that they are putting in. You can also give positive feedback on good choices that they make. For instance, turning down a party invitation to study. Reflective listening is a good practice to use when your child is stressed. For example, if they say something like, "I hate this subject, I will never be able to understand the work," you can reply with, "I'm hearing that you are frustrated and struggling. Do you want to talk about it?" Then use active listening and follow closely what they are saying. Allow them to speak their mind and provide a safe space to unleash those feelings. As we move to the next slide, I would like to remind you that this is not your exam. Acknowledge the fact that your child is a different person from you, and that those study methods that worked for you cannot be working for them necessarily. Avoid confusing them with last-minute changes or last-minute new study techniques. Relax and stop thinking that you are writing the exam. Your anxiety can be transferred to your child, and this is exactly not what they need at the moment. If you want to help, stick to practical stuff, like helping them to find old papers or resources. If they struggle, you could perhaps find a tutor to help them with certain aspects of the work. But remember to ask them first what they need and how and where you can help. In the next slide, you can also help by setting up a study environment. Make sure that they have a comfortable chair and a nice desk to write at. Make sure that there's sufficient light and air in the room that they work, and make sure that they have all the stationery they need. And then, lastly but not least, make sure that there's some peace and quiet while they are studying. In the next slide, I would like to remind you that parents can also play a role in providing the right diet and 3 healthy meals a day. Research has shown us that students that have a healthy breakfast, which includes a protein, has better blood sugar levels, which enables them to concentrate for longer. For children that are too anxious to eat, you can invest in a protein shake or make the meals smaller and regular. It is also important to make sure that your child drinks enough water. Science has also shown us that the lack of ability to focus, increased fatigue, and brain fog are all linked to the reduced intake of water. Water is fundamental to help increase the concentration for better performance. As we move to the next slide, we as parents must make sure that our kids get sufficient sleep. They need about 8 to 10 hours a night. Research has shown us that sleep plays an important role in consolidating new acquired information. If your child is suffering from insomnia, do not ignore it, but rather get help as soon as possible. Lavender oil in a diffuser can be a good natural way of helping them to relax. Also make sure that your child gets enough regular breaks during the day while they study. That can take their minds off the studying, and see if you can bring in some fun in those times or spend some quality time with them. Also make sure that they have reasonable time for socializing, relaxation, and just the enjoyment of the good things in life that will ensure their well-being. In the next slide, we can look at some things to avoid. This is not the time to criticize and to try to influence their decisions. You can, of course, remind them of consequences, but they need to make their own choices. Avoid big changes and keep a healthy routine going in the house. Don't try to get involved in their studies or to change their study methods now. Curb your own expectations and dreams for your child. All of us desire the best possible outcome for our children. These expectations can, however, have a negative impact on your relationship with your child. So put your own dreams away for the moment and take things day by day. Avoid comparing them to others, but celebrate their uniqueness and their own talents. Don't expect too much of them in terms of other activities or even household chores. In the last slide, some final words. Remember to hug them often. Love them unconditionally. Bring laughter in every day and remember that patience and enjoy those last few days of childhood. And if all else fails, invest in a tin of hot chocolate. With these final words, I would like to hand you over to Lauren Martin.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for all the helpful study strategies, Esmarie, and I loved your final words given. A warm welcome to all the parents that have joined us this morning. I'm Lauren Martin. I'm a counseling psychologist, and I will be discussing emotional well-being and coping and giving you 7 practical tips to help you support your child during this time. I will then hand over to Diana, who will speak into what burnout, anxiety, and depression are and how you can support your children. The following topics may be quite heavy as we discuss the realities of emotional well-being for teenagers and may continue to highlight the enormous responsibility parents have to support and assist their children. If you have any specific questions around emotional well-being and coping, please feel free to add your questions into the Q&A box. If we're unable to effectively address these questions live, we will then address your comments via email afterwards. But let's get started on the next slide. So the reality is that burnout, anxiety, and depression are common within the teen years. And in the context of matrics preparing for their final exams, for many students, professional intervention is required to manage and cope with their emotions. Around this time, many mental health organizations and services receive calls from distressed matric students about their emotional well-being surrounding the build-up of the exams, but then also post-exams while they're waiting for their results. Alarmingly, the majority of South Africans keep their emotional distress silent and therefore untreated. This makes it even more challenging for parents to identify if their children are suffering silently and what appropriate support to put in place, especially as we build up to the final examinations. Should your child be one of the many children who do require professional support, it is important that these resources are made available. There is a resources pack that will be sent out to all attendees, and as mentioned earlier, Diana will be speaking into kind of burnout, anxiety, and depression and what you can do as parents in order to assist your children should they be going through this. What I would like to discuss with you is emotional well-being and how learning tools to help you cope and make sense of uncomfortable emotions can actually help boost performance. On the next slide, we'll be addressing what is emotional well-being. Interestingly, for many, emotional well-being means feeling good and being in control of your emotions. But the truth is, as humans, we all have fluctuating emotions all the time. Life is uncertain and unpredictable, especially this year. And it's not possible to control our emotions or how we feel, nor is it necessary. In fact, research is showing that the more one tries to control their emotions, the more frequent and intense those very emotions become. So if you're unable to control your emotions, or your children are experiencing uncomfortable emotions like stress, this does not mean they're not coping. This means that they're human. Rather, healthy emotional well-being means learning that we can function, perform, and have success while we experience normal, natural, uncomfortable emotions such as stress. When we learn that stress or uncomfortable emotions are normal and that we don't need to get rid of them, we actually allow ourselves headspace and room to focus on what is important, like self-care and preparation and focused learning and all the strategies that Esmarie has spoken into. And those actually help us in reaching our goals. Helping matric students to function within their natural, uncomfortable emotions is important and healthy, and also prepares them for life after matric, when there will be many other events and transitions that will bring up similar uncomfortable emotions. So as parents, what can you do to assist your matric children in maintaining a healthy emotional approach to the matric examinations? On this slide, you will see that I want to speak into 7 practical tips for parents to emotionally support their children as they build up to the matric examinations, as well as after the matric exams while you're waiting for results. So the first one is mapping out future possibilities. One of the aspects I would encourage every matric student and parents to do prior to the matric examinations is to practice flexibility in planning and thinking about the future, especially this year. Every matric student is wondering about the next steps for them, whether that's finding work, studying further, or volunteering to gain experience. But students can feel emotionally stuck knowing that their matric results may create disappointment or sadness for their parents, or their results prevent them from following through on their future plans. As parents, be proactive by discussing with your child the various possibilities that are available when results aren't what are expected. Mapping out various pathways to your goals leaves students with options and possibilities, regardless of their matric exam results. For example, various mapping options could be a remark of matric exams, upgrading matric results, bridging courses such as a higher certificate that would then give you access or entry into a degree program, internships to gain work experience prior to applying for recognition of prior learning into a tertiary institution, trade institutions. Really, there are various options available. Perhaps for parents, a question to reflect on: have you flexibly mapped out your child's future possibilities with them? Tip 2, know when to reach out for help. Speak to your children about their feelings and how they are coping. Actively engage in this process. They know when they are not coping, when they're unable to function, when they're feeling paralyzed or demobilized or stuck. The matric year is challenging and this is expected, but the experience of matric and matric examinations should not leave matrics questioning their worth, their value, their future, or their life. If your children are not emotionally coping or they are questioning whether they are all right or not, rather allow them to seek professional help through organizations such as SACAP or Lifeline or the Counseling Hub. A question for parents to reflect on: have you made contact numbers readily available for your children, like sticking the numbers on the fridge as a reminder of support that is available 24/7 and for free? Tip 3, and related to tip 2, is as parents, don't project your fears onto your children. Often as parents and caregivers, we forget the profound impact we have on our children, and whether directly or indirectly, we also add pressure and stress on our children around the matric exams. As parents, we have disappointments because our children have not been able to experience a typical final year, such as participating in matric sports or matric dances, and there are many highlights in the matric year that will not be experienced. But the truth is, matrics have enough to grapple with. And so as parents, you must know that you aren't alone, but at the same time, you should know that you need to find a different outlet for your emotions so that matrics are not sitting with their own fears and the fears of their parents. Parents can also utilize the free South African organizations who provide professional support if they're not emotionally coping or if you need an outlet. Organizations like Lifeline or SACAP or the Counseling Hub. or you can visit the SACAP website for resources and tips for parents in our blogs. A question to reflect on: are you providing emotional support or adding an emotional burden on your children? Tip 4, understand your child's optimal learning habits. And this certainly links to what Esmarie was saying. For many parents, learning means sitting diligently at a desk poring over textbooks. We grew up differently from a different generation. However, your matric child will most probably prefer to do a lot of studying for their matric exams sprawled over a couch, or watching videos of their favorite YouTube teachers, or online chats with friends into peer learning classrooms. Parents of the matric cohort need a real understanding of how their child learns best. You don't want to make the mistake of shutting down or getting in the way of really highly effective learning because you've misinterpreted what they might be doing on YouTube or FaceTime. So a question to reflect on: have you discussed with your child how they learn best and then enabled a learning environment to cater for this? Tip 5, don't compare your children to their peers or your peers. Academic preparedness is contextual. Have you had the support, resources, guidance, help to capitalize on this unique year? Some matrics may be very prepared for the upcoming examinations, and others may not due to their circumstances. Also, your child's thoughts, emotions, aspirations, backgrounds, learning approaches, support structures are unique to them. Comparing exacerbates unnecessary emotional distress and in no way aids in success. As parents, ensuring that you help your children focus on their own growth, goals, and preparedness is important. Identify when your children are making comparisons and help them to realize this thought process. The question: have you sat and discussed with your child their own goals and aspirations, and are you supporting them in their dreams? Tip 6, actively look for alternative perspectives. We can't always change what we experience, what causes us stress, or even our circumstances, but we can change how we think about these events. Our minds create scenarios all the time, which we often buy into without critically being aware of, as parents, as adults as well. Our minds trap us into a particular what happens if stories or scenarios, which often exacerbate stress and anxiety. Your ability to catch when your mind does this reduces stress. For example, with the upcoming matric examinations, your child's go-to response may be, "This is unfair and should not be happening to me." This response creates anxiety and panic and often leaves individuals feeling stuck. Actively looking at things from another perspective helps us to think outside of the norm. Example, we all go through challenges and this is one of mine. Or, I will put in the work to prepare well for the examinations, despite the current circumstances. As parents, help identify your child's mind traps or scenarios. And when you do, help your child think about alternative perspectives that they may not be able to recognize in the moment. Question: are you listening to what your children are saying to themselves, and how are you helping them think more broadly? My final tip for parents is flexible routine. In general, routines like keeping to a normal school day schedule, organizing work, building in self-care into your daily routine are all helpful and aid in optimal learning. But we also find ourselves in a very different situation or circumstances this year with the disruption of normalcy. So routine or structure can look different during this time. As parents, let's be mindful that lockdown is not always conducive for a set schedule or routine. Sometimes waking up earlier or going to bed later assists with the other demands in the household. Or our emotional well-being may fluctuate, requiring a change in how we approach the day. It's okay to have an off day and not be as productive. A rigid stance on routine in any sphere of our life is not necessarily conducive to well-being nor to learning. A question to reflect on as parents: are you allowing your child to take ownership and responsibility for their daily structure required, or are you enforcing a specific schedule? I hope these 7 quick tips have been helpful. I'm now going to hand over to Diana.
Lauren. So as Lauren mentioned, I'll be talking a little bit more around the teenage depression and a parent's help guide. So as both Esmarie and Lauren have highlighted, matric students face a host of pressures from changes associated with who they are, where they're going to fit in, and academic pressures related to studying, writing matric exams, and awaiting matric results, and choosing a career path. With all this turmoil and uncertainty, further exacerbated with the disrupted academic year due to COVID-19, it can be difficult to distinguish between burnout, which is a form of exhaustion, lack of energy, fatigue, anxiety or intense worrying, being afraid to fail, wanting to belong, fearing rejection, and depression, withdrawal, hopelessness, and intense sadness from the normal process of transitioning from a teenager to a young adult. However, constant burnout and chronic and untreated anxiety has been shown to be one of the best predictors of developing depression. Now, it's important to highlight that depression goes beyond moodiness. It's a serious mental health problem that impacts on every aspect of a person's life. Fortunately, it is treatable, and parents or caregivers can help their child by recognizing the symptoms and signs of depression and getting the help that they need. So the signs and symptoms of depression will be shown on the next slide. It's important to remember that unlike adults who have the ability to seek assistance on their own, matric learners will rely on parents, teachers, and friends to recognize the warning signs and symptoms of depression and get them the help they need. While it might seem that recognizing the signs and symptoms is easy, in reality, it can be a bit more complex. So this slide highlights the signs and symptoms of depression, but it's important to highlight that with the first one being appearing sad, not all teenagers with depression might necessarily present as sad. Sometimes they might be irritable, angry, display hostility, restlessness, and agitation. And these signs may mask an underlying feeling of sadness and hopelessness associated with depression. Other signs and symptoms of depression to be on the lookout for include tearfulness or frequent crying, withdrawal from friends and family, loss of interest in activities previously enjoyed. So this could be sport activities that your child previously enjoyed doing, going out with friends, if there's a change in that type of behavior, poor school performance, changes in eating and sleeping patterns, feelings of worthlessness and guilt, a general lack of enthusiasm or motivation, so not wanting to do anything, relates to also a lack of energy or fatigue, difficulty concentrating, unexplained aches and pains, and thoughts of death or suicide. Now, it's very important that thoughts or death of suicide should always be taken seriously, and immediate action is necessary. So it's very important as parents to have the contact numbers for SACAP, Lifeline, FAMS, and the Counseling Hub readily available on your phone or on the fridge, as previously mentioned by Lauren, to ensure that you have all the necessary professional support to support your child during this period of their matric studying and writing their matric exams. Now, some questions for you to consider as parents when you're actually asking yourself, can I have a sense if my child is possibly depressed, would be as follows. How long have the symptoms been present? How severe are they? How different is your child's behavior from what their usual self is? Hormones can explain the occasional worrying about academic pressures, that a matric student would experience, but it wouldn't be the same as a continuous and unrelenting sign of burnout, anxiety, irritability, and general unhappiness that is better explained by depression. So what is an important tip from my section of this webinar is to don't ignore the problem. It's very important that depression is very real. It can be very destructive if it's left untreated. So don't wait and hope the symptoms are going to go away on their own. If you suspect your child is depressed, open up a dialogue with your child about the specific signs you have noticed in a loving, non-judgmental way, and ask them why they are worried, and tell your child why they are worrying you. Then ask your child to share what they are going through. Make it clear that you are willing to listen and willing to provide the support they need. Another important tip for parents is know when to seek professional help. When depression is severe, don't hesitate to contact and seek help from a professional, mental health professional, be it a psychologist or a psychiatrist who has the necessary training and background in working with adolescents and young adults. When deciding on a mental health professional, always ask your child for their input. So when you set up that first appointment for your child and the mental health professional, ask your child how they experience that particular session, that particular mental health professional. It's very important that your child feels comfortable and can connect with a mental health professional to ensure that there's a good fit. This is very important because it keeps your child motivated and engaged in the treatment process. My last important of a how-to guide for teenage depression is to take care of yourself and the rest of the family. As a parent supporting a child with depression, it's important that you continue to take care of yourself. As the saying goes, it takes a village to raise a child. So remember to enlist the help of friends and family. Having your own support system is critical. It will help you stay healthy, maintain a positive mindset to help and support your child through times of struggle, discomfort, and discovery. So even a small gesture of taking time to listen to your child truly conveys a genuine interest in the person they are becoming and will assist them in finding the path in life that they seek. So it's important to highlight that both Esmarie and Lauren have highlighted the importance of the various mental health professional organizations of SACAP, FAMSA, and Lifeline, and the Counseling Hub. And further information about burnout, anxiety, and depression will be included in a resource pack that will be sent to the attendees of this webinar. I will now hand over to Kirsten Harrison, our host for today.
Thank you to our three panelists for their thought-provoking talks and for providing practical strategies for all parents to consider. We do have a question in the Q&A box, so just a reminder to anyone else, if there's something that you would like to be answered today by any of our panelists, just pop that question into the Q&A box below your screen. But let's get started. This question is for Lauren Martin. Teenagers can be quite challenging, and a lot of the advice so far is focused on asking questions and encouraging your child to let you know how they are feeling. How can a parent reach a child that is withdrawn or unable to talk about how they are feeling, but it is obvious that something is not going well?
Thanks for that, Kirsten, and thanks for the question. I think it's a great question and probably a question that many parents sit with. I guess what is important here is that many parents feel stuck when, no matter how hard they try to reach out to their children, children kind of block off that conversation, or they're not willing to open up. It is common. And so I just want to normalize that for parents that are experiencing that at the moment. But what I do want to say is, as parents, we have a responsibility to consistently reach out to our children, despite them kind of closing off that conversation. Children need to know that it doesn't matter how hard children push parents away, that parents will consistently be there, that parents will consistently be approachable, that parents will consistently support them. And so while it's difficult for parents because you've now maybe tried 50 times and the conversation hasn't gone anywhere, without you knowing, children realize or have consciously taken in that their parent is there for them and that their parent cares. So I just want to commend parents that have children at the moment that are pushing them away, and to say that you need to consistently do what you're doing. I would also say to you that you would need to consistently check in with your children. So, I mean, even if that's on a weekly basis, just so that they know that you are there, that you do care, despite them not wanting to open up and maybe speak about it. The recommendation of making organization or mental health organization and services available. Children don't want to speak to their parents about what they're actually facing, but if they can privately reach out, and it's a free resource, then they may do that. But you as parents need to make sure that those contacts or resources are available. So whether that's sticking up something on the fridge or even in their bedroom, so that they can call at 11 o'clock at night when mom and dad are sleeping. But there must be resources available for your children. And I guess what I also want to say is that having a conversation with your child, even if they are not responding, is still a conversation. And so if you've got a teenager that something is a bit off at this stage and you want to make sure that they understand that you are available, having a conversation about how you've recognized how things have changed, how they don't want to open up to you, and how you're concerned is important. Let them know where you're at and kind of how you're feeling at this stage so that they know that they can open up to you. I hope that assists. Thanks for the question.
Thanks so much for that, Lauren. If anyone would like us to contact them with more information, please feel free to leave your contact details in the chat box, or if perhaps another question comes to mind after the webinar, you are welcome to contact us regarding that. In case you'd like to know more about SACAP and what we do, we'd like to extend an invite to our virtual open day. We'll be sharing more information on our programs for students that would like to study at our physical campuses. This will take place on the 14th of November from 10 o'clock to 11:30 in the morning. We also have an established online campus that has been educating students for 6 years. If your child would like to continue their studies online, we do have our online campus open days taking place on the 18th of November from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock, and then again on the 25th of November from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock in the evening. If you would like to receive further updates from SACAP, please follow our social media pages. Thank you all very much for taking the time out to join us, and I'd like to wish you all a great day further.